This review covers the 1970 Chevelle SS DONK version. It's a 1/24 scale kit from Revell number 2058. It's a skill level 2 kit for intermediate builders. Back in the 20-teens, Revell released a series of its kits to reflect the automotive trend known as donks. They featured full-size cars with large wheels up to 50 inches in diameter, expensive audio systems, and intricate paint schemes. But with those big wheels, they needed a big suspension too. And these classic kits can still be found at online auctions. Now, the term donk stemmed from the misapplication of the Impala symbol on the flagship Chevy model. Now, it's a 3-in-1 kit, a re-release of Revell's 70 Chevelle kits. And the model has seen a number of releases, but this one comes with some parts in it that would replicate a supercharged heavy Chevy, but it also has the donk version parts. Now, the decals are only for the donk version, but they do have seat inserts, and the kit has 130 pieces molded in white, clear chrome, and includes some vinyl tires and metal pins. The decals are donk version only, and overall the dimensions are, if you build the donk version, 8 3/8 inches long, 3 1/4 inches wide, and 3 inches high. Here are the decals for the kit. As you can see, they're color matched to just about anything because of their neutrality, but they will need some setting solution to, conform to the features of the model. Construction starts with the motor, and as you can see here, it's nicely detailed. It looks like the heavy Chevy massive 454 V8. And so we're going to collect these parts up, and I've elected to make the stock engine and not include the blower, which came with the heavy Chevy kit. So you'll see the stock engine build here. To add some authenticity to my model, I'm going to remove the distributor from the stock intake here and replace it with a wired distributor that I'm going to use to wire the ignition. The motor assembles easily, and as you see here, I painted the basic block and heads, etc. a metallic green to match the body. The transmission's aluminum, the exhaust is steel, and it comes with numerous chrome parts to really set it off. I'm using a wired distributor that I made myself out of styrene stock and wires, and you also see that the plug boots there are made out of shrink tubing. If you really want to do it right, you'll need a wiring diagram for those big V8s, so grab one off the internet like this and wire the distributor and ignition plugs appropriately. I drilled out the hole where the distributor was on the manifold molded in and replaced it with mine. I also painted the wires green to kind of match the color motif there. The coil wire then is used for the coil, and it's routed to where the coil would be mounted on the motor. Now you can get out the chassis, and you'll see on each side of the fuel tank there is some script work that you may want to scrape off with a hobby knife and sand smooth. And following that, paint the chassis flat black with some satin black on the frame and a steel gas tank, and then locate the motor mounts and on the motor and on the frame, and scrape off any paint there to glue that into position. We'll work with the wheels now, and the kit has 3 tire sizes and rim choices. The stock version uses the 4 regular tires with stock or centerline rims, and the street version uses 2 regular and 2 larger rear tires with the center lines. Now, the donk version uses the oversized tires and rims, and as was typical for the times, the tires had no sidewall script or brand name on the sidewalls. And of course, I used the donk rims and wheels for tires for this build. And now you can assemble the dust shields, which were painted body color too, and give the tires a rough, worn look by pressing the tread on a sheet of 220 grit sandpaper and rolling it around. Now install the rims, noting that the tires are directional, and insert the axle pin and install the dust shields. There are two sets of suspensions, as you would guess, for this model. There's a stock one and then the DONK version. So use the proper one for your build, and note that the instructions have the DONK suspension installed upside down. The chassis is fairly detailed and includes a complete chrome DONK suspension as well as the stock one, but note that that DONK suspension needs to be flipped around. And now you can see how all the parts were arranged, so go ahead and add the tires to the suspension and install it onto the frame. Likewise, the rear suspension has both the DONK and the stock version. Now use the proper one for your build and install the exhaust first, then install the springs and add the rear axle with a drive shaft in the transmission. And now your chassis is complete and it's sporting quite a bit of bling. And here's a cautionary note regarding the suspension ride height. You see here that it's fairly level, and that is correct, but the instructions are not very clear. In fact, it seems to indicate that you put the wheels and things into a different position, and so that's wrong. Of course, you'd get quite a rake on your vehicle if you made it like this. So be sure to install the suspension and the wheel mounting points in the proper locations. Here are parts for your interior, and you can go ahead and assemble the seats and take care of that seam. And note that the side walls, the side panels here are molded into the interior bucket, which makes for detailing a little tricky. But that's how they built these models back in the day. And now the interior tub is like I said, nicely detailed. And if you use the street version, add the parts for that too, the roll bar and the fire extinguisher, etc. And then add the seats and paint the whole interior tub and seats flat white. Now the underside and the inner floor under the seats is a flat black, and we'll be doing something special with that. We'd like to make the carpeting look a little more authentic, so we're going to use some carpet flocking. Now you paint the floor the color of the carpet, and then use some white glue. You just paint it onto the locations where the carpet will be. You simply then add some carpet flocking. You can also use embossing powder to make yourself a convincing looking carpet. After you've got the interior assembled, you can add the decals. There's quite a few, and you see the numbers here indicate where the decals are placed, and including some pretty impressive looking speaker arrays. Now we can work with the dashboard, and we can paint the dash and the wheel a flat white color to match the interior motif. The instrument panel is painted a flat black, and the gauge decals, etc. are added. And as you can see, there's also some flat black highlights on the vents and the shift knob, etc. So go ahead and set those aside to dry. Install the dash by cleaning any paint from the outside ends and gluing it into the notches provided. Now we can prepare the body for painting. And of course, you'll need to choose the hood that you need to use for your version. The cowl hood is both stock and DONK. And then the hood with the hole in it there is for the supercharger on the street version, the racing type version. Now note in the photo, there's a strong mold line on the C-pillar. So remove this by sanding it smooth, and then wet sand the whole body with some fine 800 grit or finer sandpaper. The body is nicely kept. They've done a good job of doing a good, keeping it clean. Now you'll also find after your primer dries that there's probably a few blemishes to sand out easily and get that ready for paint. And once you've sanded it smooth, once again some fine sandpaper, a wet sanding with like 800 grit, and then rinse it off and let it dry thoroughly. For the color coat, I'll be using Gravity Colors paint. It's called Camaro Synergy Green. It's a beautiful metal flake color, and this is a two-part paint. You paint the base color, and then after it's dry, you give it a clear coat. After the body has thoroughly dried, we'll apply the decals. And as you can see, they go on pretty nicely, but you will use some setting solution to make it conform to those contours. Next, I used some bare metal foil to appropriate the chrome trim on the model, and it does a really nice job. It's like tape that's shiny. You just put it in place where the trim is, and then you use a sharp hobby knife to trim off the excess. Some toothpicks will help put it in place, and then you can buff it with a Q-tip or a cotton swab. With the decals and the foiling done, it's time to add the window glass. Now, I decided to do something a little different, and so I used a little Alclad smoke paint to give it a tint, like you see on a lot of those, DONK type models. You can't even see into the car; they're so dark. But it's a spray gun product. You have to use an airbrush to use this. But there are also some rattle can products that are out on the market. Tamiya makes one. Now, once that's done and everything is dry, you can go ahead and glue this into position using some white glue on the interior. Following that, you're going to add the interior bucket on the top over the windows. Next, we'll pay some attention to the engine bay. You see the heater core and the master cylinder here, and those are painted appropriately, and then we'll add the battery, which is a flat black, and the water tank's an off-white, and then the wires are just kind of picked out with a black Sharpie. Now, with the body upside down, we're going to carefully slide the chassis into place by slightly shoehorning the back wheel. Next, we'll add some details to the front end and the engine bay. Now, assemble the radiator and the surround shield, and then paint that flat black and install that. And the hose is flat black there, and install the radiator and hose in place in the body. And next, we'll add some black wash to the grill. You see the insets there have been given a black wash. That's a 50-50 mix of flat black and thinner. Then the marker lights are painted turn signal orange. Install the headlight lenses into the bezels with some white glue, and then install those into the body. Then add the bumper and the grill, and cut the license plate to size and add it to the front. Next, we'll work on the back end, so paint the tail lights stoplight red, attach the lower body trim to the bumper, and then install the bumper to the car, remembering to scrape off any chrome plating or paint where you're going to adhere the parts together. Then, once again, cut out your plate and put it in place. As you see, there are a lot of pieces left over in your kit, most of them from previous versions, but they'll make great stash adds for your collection. Well, there you have it. Your model is complete. It's a fairly easy kit to build except for the suspension pieces and the decals, but for the most part it goes together very well. There's no real issues with the kit, and the body is kept in really good shape from the molds, except for the C-pillar, parting line. So with that said, as you can see, it's a real head turner, and it's going to get some attention when you buy one and put it on your shelf.
Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations, where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint. You'll find aisles and aisles of scale model kits, RC models, model rockets, Warhammer gaming, and railroading products.
Stop in at Riders today and tell them Doug sent you.